My presentation is going to be in English with a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of English, a little bit of Catalan. So my presentation will be in a new language that doesn't exist just yet. First of all, I would like to thank you all. I would like to thank my partners from the Maison du Lac. I would like to thank Olivier for having us here for this project, to share with you this project. I would like to thank Mariana for being so helpful. Thank you for having us here today. The project, yesterday afternoon, a colleague, Frank, is here, told us in his presentation that there is no place between the Water Framework Directive and the Habitat Directive. And I think that he's right. There is no link, no synergy between both directives. The project wants to find ways to connect both directives. First of all, just a bit of an introduction. I'm going to tell you about the issues of the natural park and the lake, because it's very important to know about it when we talk about this project. I'm going to give you a description of the water quality, the habitats and the birds in the natural parks. I will give you a small introduction about the constructed wetlands. I will tell you about the LIFE+ project that Albufera created, and I will tell you about the results and the post-life project. I will tell you very little about the results because we don't have time, unfortunately, to talk about everything. But there is a website that you can use, and this website you can find the report, everything that we found working in this project. It is in Spanish. It's a pity, but it's easy. Numbers are numbers, and graphs are graphs, so you would understand them. And then I will tell you about the post-life phase. So, where are we? So it's the Spain, okay, that's our region, Valencia, and the Albufera Park, it's here, okay, natural park. It's about 22,000 hectares. It's what you can see in green here. The main place in the natural park is this lake. It's more or less at the middle. The city of Valencia is very close from the park. It's more or less 10 kilometers north of the park, of the lake, and you have the suburbs of Valencia on the southwest of Valencia, with about 200,000 inhabitants around the lake. Lake is also surrounded by rice crops. Most of the biggest part of the natural park are made of rice crops. 14,000 out of the 22,000 hectares are dedicated to rice crops. The lake is a farmland because of rice production. It's a big pressure, and also we have human pressure related to the population living around the natural park. Now, a bit of history in the Albufera. Albufera, thousands and thousands years ago, I don't know exactly when, but thousands and thousands ago, it used to be a bay. It was open, okay, it was the sea. But the sediment that was brought by the Toria River at the north and the Juca River in the south created a barrier that isolated this sea, part of the sea, to create a lake. It was a lake that, little by little, was turned into salty water to seawater to fresh water, because there was a change in the use of wetlands, a shift towards agricultural use. And so the natural building of this limit between the sea and the lake was also added, the human silting process was added to that. So the lake was closed, it was completely closed. And so this area was created. You can see it here. This area are created and they are above the level of the lake. So the Tancat, it's how we call that place in Spanish, Tancat, it's above this area. This area is pretty big, it's pretty large, and it's about 2,800 hectares. There are also 3 ways out to the sea. What happened? You can see that it's always the same problem, okay? In the 70s there was an environmental crisis, industrial development, urban development as well near the Valencia area, as you saw in the map, and changes in agricultural practices because of mechanization, because of the use of chemicals in agriculture. All of that didn't, without having taken into account any water treatment plants or sanitation water treatments. So the consequence of that, you know them, a lake that was eutrophic. It's now, you can see the picture, okay, there is a green soup. It was like that. So we have this green soup. Okay. So the chlorophyll average is about 100 micrograms per liter, with peaks of 200, 250 micrograms. There is also 1 meter, about 1 meter of anoxic sediments. Yesterday we saw how important that is, and the impact, well, you know about it, loss in biodiversity, domination of cyanobacteria, submerged vegetation with the chara, myrophyllum, and also some decreasing wetlands, also a loss of wildlife diversity. Let's talk about the water now. Where does the water come from in this natural park? It comes from the Toria, so the Toria watershed, the Júcar watershed, rivers basically. The watersheds is very little in terms of the source of water. It's only when it rains. It dries, okay, the watershed dries after it rains. But as you know, when it rains in the Mediterranean, it really rains. Okay, it's a lot of water. So 8% of the water from the lake comes from the watershed, the catchment area. And it has to be when it's very rainy. The main source of water for the lake, it's river irrigation returns and exceedings. So it's water that is supposed to be used for cultures and that is not used. So 67% of the water. The problem is that there are suspended matters, there are phosphorus, nitrogen as well, nitrates, etc. There is also reclaimed water from water treatment plants and 8% of natural springs. What is important is to understand the fact that the Albufera is not today a natural lake. It's just like here. It's not like here. It's regulated. It's a reservoir that is controlled by the rice producers because they need water. So when rice producers need to empty their rice production, the level of the water decreases. When they need to use more water, then they make sure that there is enough water in the lake, so it increases. The volume is more or less 21. The depth is about 1 meter. It's very little. It's the average. The maximum depth is 2 or 3 meters, so it's very, very little. Remember, 1 meter of sediment, 1 meter of water. So yearly annual water flow is about 291 hectometers per year, mostly between September and April. And the consequence of that is that the hydraulic retention time is very long, 30 to 40 days. So 30 in winter, 40 in summer. But what is most worrying for us, it's the climate change scenario. In our most optimistic forecasts, we believe that in the next 30 years there will be a reduction of 20% of water resources in the Júcar Basin. The Júcar Basin, it's very important because it's what you can see in the top left corner here. It's the returns from river irrigation. It's what gives most water to the lake, what gives water to rice production. Now let's talk about habitats. There are a lot of important habitats, 22 habitats in the natural park. We have helophytes, we have springs. As you can see here, the little springs surrounded by the rice fields. There are coastal dunes because the back that isolated the lake from the sea is made of dunes, made of forest, Mediterranean forest. There are also wetlands, the lake, and rice fields. So it is a Natura 2000 area, a Ramsar site, etc. It is a natural park. It is a regional catalogue. So we have the national parks in Spain and then just below the regional parks since 1986. Now let's talk about birds. What happened with the birds? The population of birds are very important for the preservation of the area. We have birds that migrate, and the lake is an area where birds take a rest before getting to Africa. And we observe the dynamic of birds, and they actually demand good ecological water. These birds can increase, the population of ducks can increase. It was the case for the wild ducks. It was the case between 1966 and 2012. The population of wild duck doubled basically. So there was 10,000, between 22,000 wild ducks. And what happened, on the other hand, with the red-crested pochard? Well, it was breeding couples. In the 1960s, there were over 1,000 couples, breeding pairs, and today 50 of them. So the birds need a very good quality of water. They need macrophytes that absolutely disappeared, and we don't have them anymore. What did we do to improve the situation of the albufera? Well, they built water treatment plants to reduce phosphorus, to reduce nitrogen, but they also built stormwater tanks to prevent urban runoff. And they've also constructed wetlands. I'm going to talk about them. And this area are like planted macrophytes. It's a natural epuration, natural filtration system. We have them in France. It's what you can see here. So it's a planted filter of reeds in Caricola in Valencia. It's another area in Spain with 120 habitats. What is not very common is to use these natural filters in the natural sites. It's what you can see here. We use them in Spain, in China, in the US, but not a lot in Spain. So we don't have a lot of experience of planted filters to decrease phytoplankton. The objective is to improve water quality and to enhance biodiversity. These two objectives are the objective of constructed wetlands. Now, where do we have this constructed wetlands? I talked about the tancat, so this Spanish word I used to describe these constructed wetlands. The tancat are the built wetlands that we have. There are three tancat: Tancat de la Pipat, Tancat de Lila. Tancat de la Pipa and Tancat de Milia are around the lake. They are directly on the lake. Tancat de Milia is in the natural park, but it's far from the lake. The tancat can, use the water from the lake through the system and send it back to the lake. So it's like a cycle. It's a treatment system that reduces the concentration of pollutants that we have in the lake. But Tancat de Emilia and Tancat de Lila can work with water coming from the water treatment plants with a reduction of nutrients, because these water treatment plants have a reduction of nutrient system. So the objective here is not to reduce the quantity of nutrients and of hydrogen and phosphorus. It's rather to run a final epuration and to help biodiversity. So you can see pictures here. So the size 40 hectares, 33 hectares, and 16 hectares, and the water flow that can run through this this system. So 4,000 cubic meters a day, 3,000 cubic meters a day, 1,700 cubic meters a day, depending on the sites. And the cost is almost 8 million euros, almost 5.5 million, and 2 million euros each. It was only for the construction. Then we have maintenance, of course. What you can see here, it's what it looks like, the transformation. That's the Tancat de la Pipa in 2004 and in 2011. Now, it's a good picture, but today it is even wilder than it is now in the picture in 2011. How does it work, these constructed wetlands? Well, we have three sectors: Sector A, B, and Sector C. The Sector A, it's subsurface flow. Okay, it's horizontal. The water is on a substrate of little rocks, gravier, and I don't think you can see anything here. You don't see the water. You can walk on it. And we have phragmites that are planted there. Sector B, there is water, superficial water, it's more natural. And Sector C, it's like a lagoon, a shallow lagoon. We can run experiments to reintroduce the macrophyte vegetation. Because between Zone A and Zone B, we think that the quality of water will have improved, and we will be able to run carry out experiments to reintroduce the macrophytes. You know the program LIFE. I'm not going to get into details with it. I think it's the anniversary. It's the 25th anniversary of the LIFE program today. And why did we ask help to the LIFE? Why did we apply to the LIFE program? Well, we have three constructed wetlands, especially Tancat de la Pipa, and we wanted to show that these three coordinated management of three different areas could improve the quality of water. These are our partners. We are coordinators at the University of Polytechnics in Valencia. We have three environmental organizations and the administration that gives us fundings. The final objective, will be to come up with recommendations to public administrations to talk about the conclusions, our observations, we also carry out monitoring actions. That's what I'm going to describe now. With the Habitat Directive, we want to recover wetlands with mature vegetation, and actions have been carried out in 2014 and 2015. We manage water and we manage vegetation. I'm going to get into more details now. So water management, it's very important to understand and to know about water, because the pollutants, the ratio of pollutants depends on water flow and on water levels. So we work with one water flow and three different water levels. Point 2, 3, 4. We measure and we take actions. Now, vegetation management. So we have fungeos, it's mud driving, harvesting, planting, and monitoring of growth. And what is very important, it's to work closely with different planting patterns to improve hydraulics. We have different type of areas to reduce dead zones, to increase the water flow, and that is a picture of what it looks like. The result, you can see the difference, and you can see how it looks like. Something else that's very important is to protect submerged vegetation. Fishes, the population of fish is very important, and if we plant a lot of vegetation without protecting the fish, it doesn't work. So our colleagues build little cages like that, and they fish the fishes, and mostly carps. In the tankat, so it's an artificial salty water, and they wanted to protect, so the quality of water is not bad. Okay, now let's move to the quality of water. So in the Rocard Basin Plan, the idea was to decrease the level of chlorophylla A to below 90 milligrams for 2021 and below 30 to 20 for 2027. How do we do that? So we have physical-chemical variables, plankton indicator, phytoplankton and zooplankton, microinvertebrates, and the level 4 sediments. 2 years in 2014 and 2016. We have 8 control area, 8 sites in each tankat every 3 weeks. A few results. What you can see here, it's the tankat d'Emilia with the sites, so the monitoring sites, and the total water flow. And we build this kind of diagrams. Here you can see the reduction of suspended matters, for instance, between the input and output, the inlet and outlet. And then you can also see the level of sediments. You can see that the level of suspension is 68%. And here in the pictures, you can see the difference between the inlet water, it's green with a lot of chlorophyll, and the outlet water, 15 milligrams. So you can see the difference. We've also modelized the quality of water to look at the impact of this system on Albufera. In Albufera, we have run hypotheses. So what did we see here? We look at the size, 400, 800, 1200, and we've modelized the quality of water. And to conclude, the bird directive, there are 173 bird species in Albufera, and our colleagues from the Ornithology Spanish Society have selected their species with some conditions to have 31 representative species that have to be taken into account in management plans. So not all of them are considered, but only the 31 that are the most representatives. They monitored birds, they counted them, they tracked them, you know all about that. And then what did we do at the end? We've integrated the WFD with the Habitat Directive to create a connection between the number of birds and the water flow. It's also connected to the vegetation, of course. For each representative species, we have a technical data sheet listing all the important aspects that have to be taken into account to manage the livelihood of these birds. These data sheets can be found on the website. We have posters as well. If you want to talk about it, about these actions, you can see the posters here and the results. So we've published 4 management manuals, handbooks, let's say, to improve management of wetlands in natural areas. There is one for water management, one for vegetation management, one for birds, and one for public participation. And we wanted to speak. It's what we're going to do. We want to communicate, to talk, to give high quality type of training to integrate these wetlands that could help us to reach the objectives of the WFD and the Habitat Directive, and the bird one as well. Thank you very much. Merci Miguel pour cette présentation extrêmement intéressante, très inspirante sur l'Albufera de Valencia. Est-ce que vous avez des questions? C'est presque l'heure de la pause café, n'est-ce pas? Alors on va faire vite. Sinon on peut prendre le café ici. Do you get contradictions in your results between the water management objectives and the interest of birds? Contradictions? I don't think so. But the problem is that it's very, very difficult. Connecting the WFD and says that we have to control nutrients, okay? But what is the link between nutrients and bird species? What we try and do, because we're not finished, okay? We have the data, and now we want to use this data sheet to evolve, okay, to improve them. But I think that there are no contradictions. And the question is that it's very difficult. It's what we said yesterday, like completely different languages between one directive and the other. It's like they are written in 2 different languages. And it's difficult to create synergies between both directives, to make them work together. Une dernière question? Thank you very much for speaking in French. Between the example that you developed and the Balaton example, there are 2 cultural approaches that are very interesting. The first one, it's what I was going to say about the Balaton Lake. It was the hydraulic engineer approach. You start from a green approach and you use engineering to get results. So it is very interesting to see that in such a congress, international congress, we have 2 different approaches that are very cultural, and I think it would be very different in other areas like Africa or South America. There is some inertia brought by engineers that has to be connected with green engineering, and it has to take into account climate changes, and it's very hard to find the link in the new management tools and management techniques. And I think that what you're doing is very interesting. Both approaches are very interesting. We will talk about it more, but I would like to talk with you about it a bit more. I can tell you that in the semi-artificial area, the owner is the institution that owns the Rocard Basin. The institutions are very important in Spain, and it's difficult for people who work on the basin, who want to use this way of working, not a hydraulic engineering, but more green, let's say. It's hard to make it accepted at home. There are difficulties. It's not easy. It's not always easy.
Okay. Time for one last question.
Une dernière question peut-être? Yes, it's true that what you're saying is very interesting. I will have a practical question. So constructed wetland, for instance, something that we do. How about maintenance? How does it work? Do you cut the reeds, or what do you do with the whatever you collect, whatever you gather? So when you see that in the reed, in the plants, we find components that are not very good quality. Yes, it's a good question. In the project, we have actions we carry out with. So we ask, what do we do with the vegetation that we cut? We worked with different techniques to cut the vegetation, the reeds. But the most important for us is to try and see how reeds recover. And after we can look at the poster together, because there are some ideas about what we do after. But it's very little scale. It's very hard to look at the large volume of biomass. Yes, absolutely. But maybe we can create new habitats, for instance, new spaces. We can talk about it later. À cause du temps, et c'était pas à cause du sujet, mais une dernière question? Une toute dernière question. Alors, on va conclure maintenant. Merci beaucoup, Miguel.